This week, we're going to discuss families as we kind of continue in our almost like a unit of families information this past 3 weeks. And so we talked about at the beginning of the semester the sociological paradigms, right? And we have structural functionalism, where we talk about the various institutions in our society and how they interact. Well, in that particular instance, right, you take a look at family as an institution. It's not our families, our personal micro level families. It's the family as a macro level institution. And so that's where we're going to start with this. What are the societal functions of the family? And if you were to define what family means, and actually, if we were together in class, that would have been one of the activities that we do. I would have each group write a definition of family, and then I'd go around the room and have one person from each group share what it is. And it's really, really an amazing little quick activity to do because the definitions are all just so heartwarming and beautiful. They're not a lot of times always about biology or anything else. It's about support and care and concern and the people and the choice that we have to develop, our own personal families. Because I have said before here and there in the class, but especially now, like families, number one, to have an intact family is a social privilege. Number two, families can be an inordinate amount of heartache and pain and stressors for some individuals. It's not that families are always puppies and rainbows and all the happiness and love in the world. And so that's really, really important, I think, to always mention in relation to conversations specific to this, that it's not necessarily something that we all have in a traditional sense, but we do have the opportunities, thankfully, to form our own families and shape and care for who's important in our lives. But going back to macro level, let's talk about how the family as a institution provides for our society. So here are the various things, the societal functions of the family as an institution. Economic production. Families, quite honestly, grow children up to be people who work in our society and work in our economy. And then also, families need a lot of different things. And so, a lot of economic production takes place on behalf of families. Protection. If we were still in the classroom together and somebody were to walk in with a baby asleep in a baby carrier and they carefully, place the baby carrier down on the ground and they walked out of the room, when class was over, like at the end of the night, could we all just kind of leave and be like, bye, baby, see ya? Like turn off the lights, go home, right? What age would that person have to be for us to all feel comfortable walking out of the room and being like, bye, take care? Like pretty old, right? We would probably, depending, I mean, I guess we had a night class, so that seems a little bit different than a class that was happening at like 12 o'clock in the afternoon or something. But, I would say I would not feel comfortable. Well, I mean, it's 16, 17, 18 in some ways. I mean, if it were a class at noon and this was a child that I didn't know, I mean, maybe if they were 12, 13. So that idea of we protect our young for years and years on end, that doesn't always happen again in the animal kingdom. And so thinking through, like, we do a lot of protection of children on behalf of society. We also teach, let's go back to socialization, right? How much of socialization did we actually learn within our families? And so there's a great deal of socialization taking place. There's care of aging family members or family members that maybe have a long term illness. We talked last week about the second shift and how much all of that just kind of family tasks time takes up. They actually call caring for sick or aging family members the third shift in some ways. And many families are in a position where they are caring for aging family members for years on end. And in fact, they have done research saying with longevity and how much longer people are living, that my generation and your generation and generations behind us could very well be caring for aging parents for as long as we're raising children. And how long do we consider raising children, right? We consider that to be about 18 years. So there's an inordinate amount of work that is done on behalf of society to care for aging family members. There's recreation. Now, granted, there's not a lot of recreation right now as I'm recording this and you're listening because so many things are things that we're staying away from right now with social distancing and quarantine. But if we were to go to the movies or to Disneyland or to celebrate holidays and things like that, a lot of times that happens, all that recreation happens together in families. Then this is something you don't always think of, but technically, by virtue of our definition of who is a family member, cousins, second cousins, and things along those lines, there's an element of sexual control that is being taken care of by the family, the institution of the family. That doesn't always occur, again, like in the animal kingdom. And so those definitions really, really matter. And then finally, reproduction. People are having people. And when you think about population and countries and things, countries are relying on families to have children, because if their population starts to dip and they have an aging population, but they don't have as many children growing up to be workers in an economy and pay into the tax system and things, that can get very dicey and worrisome quickly. And so reproduction is something that the family provides for society. Okay, let's cover the fact that there are different family structures. There's marriage equality. So we have the opportunity now to marry the individual that we love dearly and fills our heart with love and joy, regardless of sexuality. And so that is an important distinction that has not always historically been in place, but we have been fortunate as a society to have marriage equality for several years now at this point. There's single parent families. I was raised in a single parent family, and I know many, many of you might have been too. There's blended families. I was not raised in a blended family, but if either one of my parents had gotten remarried to somebody who had children, I would have been in a blended family. And a lot of times that term blended is kind of a misnomer, because that doesn't always come together just in this beautiful blending of families. A lot of times, sometimes, like families kind of crash into each other in some ways. That's a lot for siblings to get used to, that now all of a sudden they have more. And so that's a challenge that can be faced by families. There's people who decide not to have children, so to be child free. And then there's people who've dealt with and grapple with infertility. And quite honestly, you know that I had my daughter Mac early when I was 20 years old, but also my husband Sean and I have dealt with infertility. And so I can speak, and I will not tell you the whole story right now because that takes a while, but I have been on both ends of the spectrum where I have gotten unexpectedly pregnant and then could not get pregnant. And we were not able to have more children. And so that can be something that people feel like they have to hide, and like it's, they're not allowed to talk about. And so I would really encourage you, if if you have friends in the future who are grappling with infertility, to be a support system and be a person that they know that they can talk to about what they're going through. Okay, talking more specifically about parenting, I have a question for you. So, if you think about raising children, would you say symbolically, are children more like wildflowers that just develop and grow? When you think about wildflowers, they need sunshine, they need water, they need space, right? So, they need those things, but other than that, they'll grow. Or is it more like tending to a garden? When you have a garden, and like every spring, Sean and I grow a tomato garden. Um, you think through, you micromanage, you analyze. I carefully picked we have 5 tomato plants here at our house. And actually, oftentimes we have 9. And it's ironic that I don't even actually really like eating tomatoes that much, but I love growing tomatoes. And I love like get the chance to give them away, like to give my friends and family and neighbors like a Ziploc bag full of all different kinds of tomato varieties makes me really, really happy. But like I've picked that we have cherry tomatoes and we have slicer tomatoes, and we have early producers, and we have indeterminate and determinate. We grow them in sand instead of dirt. And we this year we analyzed a whole new way of staking them as opposed to tomato cages. Like when you tend to a garden, you're doing a lot of micromanagement, you're doing a lot of high level analysis, right? So that's why I kind of talked you through our tomato garden, to think through, like when you're parenting, how much effort and analysis you put into it. So if you were to answer the question again, are children like wildflowers that develop naturally, or is it like tending to a garden? So think through kind of what your answer is, and we're going to talk about where this idea came from. This is, again, kind of seminal work in sociology of families. Annette LaRoe really came into the sociological realm by stating the fact that, previous to her work, a lot of times race and ethnicity was analyzed as far as cultural norms, as analyzed as far as parenting decisions and the way that people parented. But Annette LaRoe came in and said, no, socioeconomic status, social class has a heck of a lot to do with parenting too. And so this idea of tending to a garden, or this wildflower idea, comes out of her parenting typology, that there are 2 different methods by which parents parent best based upon their social class. The first one is concerted cultivation. And this is the garden idea. So, this is the idea that you've carefully selected, you weed, you do all of these micromanagement type things. And so, this is middle class families. And one of the ways that parents parent in middle class families, Annette Lareau found out, was that there's a lot of focus on cultivating children's skills, both their ability intellectually, but also their social skills. And the way that this is done a lot of times, Leroux found out, is with extracurricular activities. So kids are going from ballet classes to soccer teams to a math tutor, and goes, they're very, very busy with all these various activities to try and maximize, their abilities as a human being. One of the things that parents do in concerted cultivation is that they negotiate. They allow their children to just kind of not take no for an answer, and that they can, say, but wait, can I do this? What about this? And have a voice. If it were 8 o'clock at night and you had a child that got to play a half an hour of video games towards the end of the night, and it's time to go to bed now, and you say, hey, you need to turn off the game, it's time to go to bed, your child, like, the negotiation would be like, no, can I just finish this level? And then I promise I'll brush my teeth really fast, and I won't, I'll go to bed the first time and I won't ask for water and things like that. It's that kind of negotiation. But here's the thing that Annette Leroux does a really good job with. A lot of times as our society, we will just say that middle class by default is, the best, right? And that like parenting methods held by the middle class would be the best. And Annette Leroux is like, yeah, not so fast. There's some serious problems here. One is that there can be a real sense of entitlement, that I deserve this, that I should get what I want, right? And so when you have all these discussions and negotiations with kids, they kind of start to see themselves as equals. And so that can really, really go awry as they grow up and get older, that they kind of can act like, well, no doesn't mean no. No just means keep arguing for and debating what it is I want. The other thing that Leroux critiques is with all those extracurricular activities, a lot of times when kids then have their own free time, they don't know what to do with it because they go from one structured activity to the next. They don't know how to just play and to, be imaginative and things along those lines. The other aspect of Annette Leroux's typology is accomplishment of natural growth. And so this is the wildflower idea, that these are kids that are in socioeconomic statuses where families have to work hard to provide comfort, food, and shelter because of socioeconomic status. Thinking back to when we played Spent a few weeks ago, and I had you go through that website a couple of different times, like, it takes an inordinate amount of effort to provide food and shelter for families. And so that is a lot of times the focus. And so these are the wildflowers. This is where families love children and they care for children, and they don't necessarily micromanage every aspect of their upbringing. So they see children's development as spontaneously, that children will grow. And one of the key aspects of accomplishment of natural growth is that the parents, that now no means no. If we go back to that example of, but why, mom? Why can't I? What's the answer? Because I said so, right? Do what I say. Don't question me. This is what I'm an adult. You're a child. There's a division. You don't question what I say. And because of that clear boundary between children and adults, the one thing that Annette Leroux warns about with accomplishment of natural growth is that when it does, there's a balance, because I just talked about a sense of entitlement and that no means no. When you do learn that no means no, you might end up in a situation with possibly teachers in the future, with possibly medical professionals, where if they're saying no, you do need to kind of advocate on your own behalf. And so you do need to have some of those skills. You can't have this rip-roaring sense of entitlement that you better do what I say because I deserve this. But there's a balance. You do need to have some skills in order to be able to advocate for yourself, and that can kind of be problematic with accomplishment of natural growth. So there's so much more that we oftentimes can cover when we're together in class. I've kind of done the highlights right now, but I hope you can see where some of your family's parenting decisions kind of come alive with accomplishment of natural growth or with concerted cultivation. But I will be honest with you, when I do ask students to talk about this together, regardless of social status, and granted this was Annette Leroux's research, you do find a lot of times that you do see your parents utilizing both concerted cultivation and accomplishment of natural growth. If you are in that same situation right now as you think about your own family, know that you're not alone, that as I have always discussed this with classes, I have found that most often students see both of these aspects of parenting come up in their own families. And so that's a really, really typical experience. And we'll go ahead and leave it there.